Welcome back to another video, and in this video I'm going to go through everything regarding Dubbo as an investment location. Dubbo is a location that has great potential as an investment for the budgets of around $450 to around $600,000. There is wonderful potential within this area, so I'm going to break down everything about this location. And if you didn't know, Dubbo is in New South Wales. It's about 4 hours away from Sydney. It's a relatively big regional location with about 60,000 odd population. And like always, I'm going to go into the data behind it and the underpinning metrics of what this location could look like in the next 6 to 12 months. And like always, I am on hashtag. I do have a referral code for 25% off, so make sure you use that referral code. And we can see the median house price is around $650,000. However, in this location in Dubbo, you can get houses from around $450,000 to around $650,000. That's where I would say the sort of the market value price is and where you should be looking to buy. Yield isn't the best. The yield you'd usually expect around 4.5% in Dubbo, which is in line with most regional locations in Victoria and Melbourne as well. Melbourne's a bit lower, 60,000 on population. And we can see over the past 3 years, it's had about 10% growth, and over the past year, around 3% growth, which is good to see, right? This location has been stagnant since about 2022, and now we're starting to see more activity within this market, and prices are starting to increase just that tad bit, which means we are early into its next market cycle. And it's important to remember that this location in Dubbo, like most other regional locations in Victoria, did go through a burst of growth during COVID in 2020 onwards to about 2022, and it's gone stagnant since then, and it's just starting to rise. In similar, we're seeing rent starting to rise around 2%. It's not the best, but it is rising nonetheless. Indicative yield is around 4%. We can see during the COVID boom, the yields compressed, and now we're seeing the yield starting to rise, which is really good for us as investors, because the better the yield, the better the rents, the better the cash flow position. Like always, it's nothing close to what Townsville or Perth was back in 2020. However, it's still better than some locations that people choose to invest into. We can see the rented to owner occupier ratio is around 34% with an ERSAT score of 4%. So not the worst socioeconomic area, but not the best either. I would say honestly, this is better metrics than most regional locations. We can see the location is still very affordable, under 35 years. So that means for local residents, this place is still very affordable. The market is starting to heat up with the days on market around 42 days, stock around 0.18%, and vacancy around 1.7%. And as you can see here, the stock levels are about flat, and if they start to drop, which some months they are dropping, that decrease in supply will work in combination with the increase in demand, and then we should start to see house prices grow a little bit more. And overall, the data isn't capturing the activity which is happening in the market, but we are seeing a little bit more increased activity from investors and buyers agents looking into the Dubbo market because it has the key metrics of what investors are looking for: decent yield as well as affordable entry points. And that's really important for investors. And I think over the next few months, we will start to see a little bit more improved data. Inventory levels are looking good and vacancies are starting to drop as well. And this falls within our threshold of around 2%. It's around 1.7%, which is really good to see. Now, it is important to note that the rental return isn't as strong. We're only seeing 2% increase in rents over the past year, which isn't the strongest, but it is still in an acceptable range for us to consider as an investment. And you can always cross-reference this data with other sources like SQM Research or DSR or whatever you use, and you can start to see that over the 12 months, there's about 6% in Dubbo. And if we start to look at the rents, and I go to asking rent, for example, we can see the rent has also been increasing around 6%. So a little bit of variation between hashtag and SQM, but it gives us confidence to say that the rents are rising in this location, and that is something that is good for us to see. Again, not the best, but still good. But there is more to Dubbo, and there is still a lot more to actually talk about this location. And before I get into that, if you have not already, make sure you are subscribed to the private community. We have over 200 members, right? 200 investors like you who are lost, confused, uncertain about which locations to invest into, who now have a better idea, are more educated, and are mentored personally by myself to pick the right locations to invest into. And if you are stuck, struggling, or confused about where to invest next, about the process, or any simple question, then you need to be in the private community. So I and all the other investors can help you in achieving your goals, right? So make sure you join in. There's 30 plus reviews for you to go have a read of. There is so much exclusive content. There's property resources, there's links, there's templates, there's weekly community calls. It's an absolute no-brainer for you guys to jump into the private community. It will help you, right? Just the resources alone, without the mentorship, it will help you. And the mentorship is the cherry on top. Let's get back into the video. All right, the next thing we do need to talk about is Dubbo's regional economy as well as its economic output. Now, a lot of people are unsure about Dubbo as a location to invest into because about its underpinning regional economy as well as its diversity and whatnot. And I'm going to break it down for you. All right, Dubbo is a huge location. It supplies towns like Narromine, Wellington, Gilgandra, Turange, and more, Coburg and Burke. And there's a lot of little towns that Dubbo actually supplies, works with, and provides to their economy, right? So Dubbo is a very central piece to the wider region of this area. Dubbo has major services like Dubbo's Base Hospital as well as Dubbo's Charles Sturt University. It has education, it has healthcare, it also has a TAFE in Dubbo. It has a regional airport as well, which has regular flights to Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, etc. It has other retail services like Arano Mall, etc. So there's a lot of actual services as well as economic diversity in this location. There's also a zoo, which helps the tourism industry within Dubbo as well. There's also the Botanic Gardens, and I can go on and on about this regional location. In fact, even the property managers I talked to actually moved away from Sydney to Dubbo because it's just a quieter place to live. Now, that's just me talking. Let me show you some stats as well behind it. When you look at Dubbo's regional economy, supplies around 27,000 jobs of 60,000 odd population, annual economic output of $10 billion. And if we look over here, we can see that in 2020, 3.6 billion, 21, 3.9, and in 2024, 5.1 billion. So their GRP is increasing year on year, which is really good for us because that gives us confidence about its job diversity as well as output. There's jobs in the area and the economy is going strong, which is really what we want to see in a location that we consider investing into. Not only that, if we start to go to industries and we look at the industries within the area, and I set this by descending, we can see that it is supplied by healthcare, construction, retail trade, education training. So it is quite economically diverse. Yes, healthcare is a big portion of it. However, it's still reasonable to say that the location is economically diverse. You can also see its regional exports into manufacturing, construction, healthcare, public administration, and you can also see the numbers on this website. So go have a check it out. But in my opinion, it is reasonably diverse. It is a good location to consider in terms of a long-term hold, as well as the short-term data is starting to look that little bit better. And that's from its economy side of things, right? It's looking good. The data is getting better. It's looking good in terms of a long-term hold, and it's starting to look better in terms of a short-term hold as well. But there is a bit more to break down about Dubbo, right? So make sure you watch till the end of the video, because even if you miss out just one smidget of information, you could be putting yourself at a disadvantage here. Now, if you notice, one thing I did tell you about at the start of the video is that in Dubbo, you can get properties anywhere from $450,000 to $650,000 and more. But there's a reason why there's such a diverse price range. Unlike most regional towns where you break it up into separate suburbs, Dubbo is kind of just known as Dubbo as a whole. And there are good pockets of Dubbo and bad pockets of Dubbo. And I'm going to break that down for you, right? And Dubbo's attractiveness really extends into separate locations. The east side, the southeast, the northeast, these sides are more popular for owner-occupiers. It's the more desirable pockets of Dubbo, right? This east side, the southeast side, these are the desirable spots. While as when you start to look at the north side or the west side of Dubbo, particularly some very pockets in here, they are not as desirable, where you will find the cheaper properties, right? The cheaper locations around the 450 to 500 range, while as here you're going to find more around the 550, 500 price bracket. And so you really need to understand the Dubbo market before you enter it, because you don't want to be buying into a bad area. Now, does that mean just because you buy in the cheaper end of the suburb, that means it's bad? No, it doesn't. There are also bad pockets within the cheaper areas of this location, and that's why it's important to do your due diligence about where the public housing is. And a website that you can use is OpenStats. And if you look at this website here, you can already start to see the north side has a bit more public housing, as well as the west side has more public housing in these pockets here that I mentioned before. Now, of course, do your own due diligence, talk to a property manager about the location, about the public housing specific pockets, because you don't want to buy the wrong suburb or the wrong area of the suburb. And there's also a couple of other nuances that I would look into Dubbo before investing there. What I have noticed is that they have higher property management fees compared to most other regional locations. They sit around, 8 to 10%, while as regional suburbs in Victoria are around the 6 to 7.5% mark, is what I find. Not only that, Dubbo has a soil problem. Some of these locations that they have houses built, they don't have the best soil underneath them. So it's important that when you do your building and pest report to look if there is any movement within the houses, right? And about which locations where this poor soil quality is, because movement in houses means there could be worrying concerns about its underlying foundation. And one other little tip that I would tell you is that Dubbo prefers and almost wants you to do your building and pest inspection during the cooling off period. They do not like the clause in the contract, right? They want it in the cooling off period. So you sign the contract, you do the building and pests report during the cooling off period, and then you continue on with the contract. They don't like that building and pest clause in the contract. I'm not too sure why. That's just the dynamics that it works at. That is what happens when I talk to those property managers and the sales agents, and that's how they operate. So it's a little bit different from Sydney and most other places you invest into. But when you enter the market in Dubbo, make sure you're aware of the process because it works just a little bit differently compared to other locations. And so if we look at a property like this, 2 Strickland Street in Dubbo, a 3x1, 460 to 485, and you have a look at where this property is located, and I just put that address in here, you can see it's in a little pocket around here. So not in the best location, but not in the worst location by any means. It's one in the better parts of Dubbo, I would say. And a property like this is 460 to 485. You can see it's not the highest quality property. It's a little bit old, but it's a nice tidy brick veneer home, which is the type of properties I like to buy, personally speaking. And something like this will go for around, 460, 480. Let's just say 480, for example. At a 12% deposit, it's around $83, $85 in terms of your deposit. And you're going to fetch anywhere about 450 to around, I think 450 rent is what you look to achieve, around a 4.8% yield and around a negative $1,000 in cash flow. So be prepared for that negative cash flow. Remember, it's not as bad as regional Victoria, I would say. It's actually on the alright side because you haven't got the land tax, but you still have got, the higher water rates, the higher service rates, etc. And something like this could be a good buy for an investor looking for the short and the long term as well. And there's potential to uplift equity in this property, repaint the walls, redo the tiles, redo the carpets, and you can make some good money from it. And so I hope that has given you a good breakdown of Dubbo as a regional location and about the suburbs and the location to consider investing into. So make sure you do your due diligence, make sure you contact a property manager and talk about the area. Understand how the sales process works in Dubbo because it's a little bit different compared to other parts of Sydney, Melbourne, Victoria, Queensland, etc. And make sure you are aware if you go to invest in Dubbo, do your due diligence. And I hope this video has helped you. And like always, if you have not, join the private community because I will be able to answer your questions there and I will be able to assist you on your property journey every single step of the way, right? It is such a bargain. No one else does it like I do it. You need to make sure you're part of the community to get that help that you need to secure your property. Till next time, thank you.